let's go. Let's go, let's go. Stay blessed, keep stacking, turn up my mic.
Here we are.
Welcome to the Real
Bread Life. Episode 1. I'm here with Bob Braley, colleague of mine, fellow bread man.
That's it.
He agreed to do this, be my first interview, so I'm happy for him to come. Glad to have him. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so let's just start real briefly. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Originally, where are you from?
New Bedford, Mass. is where I was born.
New Bedford, Mass.
New Bedford,
what
Mass.
part is that? Is that near Boston?
It's near Fairhaven, lower part, Fairhaven. It was the whaling capital of the world at one time.
Really? So right on the water?
Yep, right on the water, New Bedford.
Okay.
Behind the Elizabeth Islands, on the inside inlet of the canal.
Have you ever been whaling?
No, I have not.
Whale watching?
Whale watching, yes, up in Provincetown. I've done that. I've done it out off the boats and seen it.
How
Very
close
nice.
do you say you got to?
Oh, just within a few feet. They come right up along the boat sometimes. They're just curious. They just got to get up close to the boat. But then again, there's distance shots.
Okay.
Really.
The big ones like the killer whales? Are those type of whales up there? Or?
I don't know. That's part of the porpoise family, I think.
Okay.
The killer whale.
You're teaching me.
I don't know for sure, but that's a different animal, I think, compared to the whales.
Dolphins up there as well?
Dolphins are part of that same family, I think. But they're all in there. They're all out there. All the creatures. Cape cod used to be so full of fish, codfish, that they said you could scoop them with a basket in the old days, right out of the water.
Damn.
They got greedy though and depleted the stocks. They were using them for fertilizer. Can you believe that? They were using the fish for fertilizer in the fields because there was just so many of them. And now they're protected to the point where they only allow fishing so much. All that shell fishing, all that ocean fishing is very, very regulated. And all around the Cape is protected, national seashore. So you can't work within a certain distance of the shore. And when we drove on the beaches in Provincetown and Truro and all those areas, you can see the seals out there taking clams and shellfish out of the ocean that are big as a pie plate because there's nobody to harvest them anymore. They're having a ball out there.
Okay.
They're having a ball. So are the great white sharks because there's a lot of seals now. So you got to be careful in the water because it's like ringing the dinner bell, like they said in the movie. You're out there splashing around. The sharks hear that, and you got to be careful.
New Bedford, Mass.
New Bedford, Mass.
So how'd you end up in Connecticut?
Well, it was a long trip. My father's job took him to Tennessee. I lived in Tennessee for a while. My brother and sister were born in Tennessee, and then we moved to Asheville, North Carolina, where another brother was born. And then his job brought him back to Connecticut, and that's how we ended up there in Thomaston. Thomaston. He was a textile engineer for Gould Allied Control in Plantsville.
Is it still around?
It was bought out by a French company, Télémécanique, and my father's opinions and ideas clashed with new management, so see you later, bye.
Oh, okay.
That happens,
Okay.
He was a manager of the division, and they didn't want to hear his opinions and his style. They had their own way, and he got let go.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, well, it was a tough thing for him because he had a headhunter looking for jobs. And I remember you talking about a headhunter a long time ago looking for some kind of employment for somebody. And they failed. They couldn't find him anything that he wanted.
Yeah, those headhunters are a real serious profession.
They try their best, and a lot of times they can find you something. But at that time, I think I was in the electrical trade, and then we had an opportunity to go into the land clearing, tree cutting business from an elder friend of mine.
Way to segue in, because I was going to get into that, because we know each other through doing the bread.
Right.
But before you did the bread, you did something else.
I was in the land clearing, logging, tree work.
Land clearing and logging.
Yeah, that's a tough life. Like those guys on Axeman, but not the severe hills and that different kind of machinery. We were more on the ground. We did work some tough areas, though. Cornwall, Sharon is very mountainous terrain. You got to be careful because that's how you get hurt if you're not careful.
So logging is physical.
Yes,
physical job.
Very, very physical job.
As is ours. Most people wouldn't think so because it's bread.
And I said the same thing. I said it's bread. How hard could it be? But when you're coming down the ramp with that 12 stack high platform of bread, And you
Especially if it's some
if
Arnold.
it's Arnold, and you
Look, we both know that
yeah, we
Arnold.
know that one. They're a pound,
That or bagels.
yeah,
Bagels
they're
are heavy,
a
too.
pound a loaf, and there's 12 in there. So 12 times 12 is 144 pounds without the wheels and trays.
Okay.
So that's a serious amount of weight coming down the ramp. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to be hardy for that.
I love the breakdown.
Yeah,
You can tell you're a bread man.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
lot of numbers involved.
It took a while to get there. It took a while to get there. And even though there's some of the bread is a little lighter and there's only 10 in a tray, it's still a 100-pound stack coming down the ramp.
I think that's the misconception people have about when they hear we do bread. Unless they know or they're in a store or they're familiar with vending life, they
Right.
assume, it's
Right,
loaves of
right.
bread.
How hard can it
You
be?
don't work that hard.
Right, but it's not just the work; it's the time frame and the stamina of getting up regularly.
Before you go there, how did you get away from the logging?
landfill.
How did we end up meeting?
I the same person who helped train you to get faster and learn more about the business was my girl's brother-in-law.
You can say his name. Who's
Johnny
that guy?
Ritchie. Johnny
Ritchie. I
Johnny
want
Ritchie.
you to give him his props because
Yep.
I will always give him his props, and I'll explain that.
His father
later.
was a Freihoffer man for a long, long time, and that.
So going how far back when you say a
Oh,
long
God.
time?
No,
So
I don't wanna
we-
say- I don't wanna
well,
say-
no, I'm going to say. Well, they're not being disrespectful for the time frame. I'm just saying we met probably 10, 11 years
Right,
ago.
right.
So, and I think John Ritchie's been when I
He-
met
he-
him
he
was
was
20
there,
years
right.
in. So put his father 20 years before that.
Right, at least.
You know?
He was a Freihoffer man. But after the bug...
70, 80s.
Yeah. 70s I heard was big for Freihoffer. 70s and 80s.
When they had to write out their orders.
Yeah, and then they had these big typewriter-sized machines that did the printout and the write-out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was huge. When we came into it, everything got consolidated in size.
Right.
The electronics, as we know even now, are shrinking. With
Right.
even to the new stuff that we have that we
Right.
just got. Everything's shrinking. It's getting faster. The electronics.
Right. I got them here.
They're
I got
smarter, yeah.
This is what we had when I met
Yeah,
you. This
yeah.
is how the computer.
how'd you get to keep
this
that?
is the computer how it worked out
Yeah.
when we first met.
How'd you get to keep that?
Well, I know some people in some places.
Yeah, well, they all got thrown away anyway, so it's
Except
good.
mine
It's
and Mark's, which I
It's
had.
a nice paperweight,
Well, he paid for them.
right?
So
I don't
and
know
here's the new one.
Then why did I have to turn mine in? I should have kept mine too.
I might get a phone call.
That's
then.
a
You think
gray-
I might get a phone call?
That's a gray area. You are absolutely right. We had to
But-
pay for this one,
yeah. Well, technically paid for this one.
and the guy that bought the route before me paid for it. So when I bought the route, it technically was
own
part of my.
Right.
Why didn't
Yeah.
I keep that? You are absolutely right.
So okay,
Damn, where were you?
I'm here now, Bob.
When I was trading it in.
I'm here now.
I know, but I missed that. See, you were
So-
smart. You got
so-
that. I missed that.
Yeah, well, I'm nostalgic with things sometimes, and I
That
think
is
everything
exactly it.
comes into play at some point. But go ahead. So John Ritchie,
Right, and
how'd that turn into you?
he was doing the school route. He had all schools,
Yeah.
so he didn't have to
No
deal,
stores at all.
He didn't have to deal with the stores. It was a straight 16% straight through. And he told me one day he did $1 million in sales, and that was 40 weeks of $4,000 a week for the schools. He made $160,000 in 42 weeks. So we always talked about it at the parties, with the family. And even construction guys.
had you mentally
and
hooked
other
with
guys,
that
oh,
money,
dude, I
with
was
that
making more
number.
money than the president, he said at the time. Because that
Yeah,
was
I
when the
know,
president was
they-
making 200,000. And then he was jumping routes for cash. Probably shouldn't say that because you got to make sure the government gets their share. But
Well, if they 1099, then they
he
paid their
probably
taxes.
did. He probably did.
So,
yeah,
so we're,
yeah.
we're good.
And he had 8
I'm
kids.
sure he paid his
So
taxes.
he got a lot
all-
back. But anyway, he called me. I always told him, because the woods is tough. You're fighting the weather, the rain, the snow. You don't always work every day. Breakdowns, chasing people for money constantly.
Right,
So
right.
so I told him if the right route ever came along, give me a shout and let me know. I'll crunch the numbers and see what happens. And it happened. He had a route in Hartford that was being breached. They wanted to sell it. It was a good route. He called me in. I went into it, and I had my first panic attack. I don't know if I ever told you this. I had my first panic attack in my life, and I didn't even know what it was. It was the thought process, like you were saying, of bailing on everything I knew in the woods, however many years I've been doing it. I've been cutting wood since I was a little kid with my father, burning at home, and it kind of grew into all of owning your own business. And thinking about bailing on all of that to spend $150,000 again to buy a route, buy a truck, and dive into something that I had no clue about.
Right.
I had a panic attack. And I said something to my girl afterwards. I had the sweats, the dizziness, the upset stomach, and I didn't know what it was. And she said to me that you had an anxiety attack, a panic attack, because you were unsure of what you were doing and what was going to happen. And once I understood that, they always say it's mind over matter. You got to train your mind. You got to say it's all right. Teach yourself.
Sometimes.
Stress is tough. Stress is tough. It's a hard thing. You can say you're not stressed, but you are still stressed. But I have never had one since because I understood it. I absorbed it. And I ended up doing it with the bread route. I went there and learned. And it still was tough. It was still an anxiety thing. But I kept all the equipment. And I still use it occasionally.
When necessary.
It's the nostalgia thing.
So if I called you and said, hey, I got to cut this tree down in my backyard,
I could come to your house and do it.
Ready.
Matter of fact, in my neighborhood, there's a guy that's buying a piece of land behind him. And they're getting their approvals to put in a road. And I can take all my stuff up the street into the neighbor's yard and do one last clearing job before I sell the stuff. I mean, it was nostalgic, like you said, with that handheld.
I like to thank Bob. I like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in to Real Bread Life, RBL, Resilience Builds Legacy. That's all we got for now. Stay blessed, keep stacking. I'll see you on the next one.